All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to another coding tutorial video. This time we are going to start diving into the topics of strings and working with string methods to show you all of the things you can do when working with text in Java. So let's go ahead and create a new file. So I will go over here and I'll create a new Java class, and I'm going to say working with strings. And of course you can put what you want, but again, when I name my files, I like to name them based on what I'm doing in there. So now we are ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up really quickly. All right. And we are then going to go into our comment, and we're going to say this program is showing how to work with strings and string methods. All right. So now that we have that, you can start your main method. So public static, void main string args. All right. Oops. All right. There we go. All right. So now that we have our main method, we can go ahead and get started. Now inside of our main method, we want to start by obviously first creating strings. So that's what we're going to do. Creating strings. The first way is to do string, then we give it a variable name. So we'll say s1 equals this is a string. And we know it's a string because we have the double quotes. And to end it, we use our semicolon. So now we have created a string object that we can work with. More examples of strings could be string place, and then we'll tell our code a specific place. So let's say Florida. And then we'll do another string and we'll say string vehicle equals plane. All right. So as you notice, each of these string objects are starting with the word string, followed by a variable name, and then the actual string itself. And as you see in my IDE, it is showing you the string in green font. So now that we have 3 strings, we can start working with these strings. So the first thing that we can do is print them out, which we've technically already done in the other tutorial, but just to add one example of it, we'll say printing strings. And for example, we will say system.out.print line, and then we are going to state one of the variables for our strings. So we'll say s1. Again, we can do it another print statement dot print line. Oops. And in this case, we are going to do place. All right. So those are some simple ways we can print those strings. Now, if you want to be a little bit fancier and maybe combining strings or using concatenation to print out a combination of strings, you would use the plus sign. So we'll say concat strings using plus. So in this example, we have 3 variables. We've already used 2 of them, so the only one left that we haven't used is vehicle, which we'll use now. So in this case, we can say our print statement. So we'll say system.out.print line. And let's say we want to put some text before our string data. So you could type in manually some text. So you can say, John is taking and add space. That space after it is going to put a gap between the string that we're typing right now directly into the print statement and the variable we are going to be adding to that print statement. So plus, we'll say vehicle. All right. So now that will then combine the string that we placed in the print statement, which is John is taking a, to the string that is stored in vehicle, which is plain. And it will print that out as 1. Now, let's go ahead and create another print statement to use a concatenation example. And then we could say, John is going to space, add a plus. We can use one of our other strings, so place plus. Now, before we keep going, I want you to take note that we don't have a space after Florida. So if you do not want your variable to combine with another variable or another string that you're using in this print statement, we would have to manually add our space here. And then you can add your next variable, and in this case we're saying John is going to Florida, and we'll say on a. Now again, in this case, because we're doing it like this, you can either leave this extra space here or you can delete it if you're doing another string directly after it. So this would make more sense having an empty space if you're going to follow that empty space with another variable. In our case, we're not going to, but again, I was just going to show you for example purposes, so we can remove this. And we're just going to say we're going to add our space in front of the on, so we know it's there. We're going to add our space after a, so we know that's there. And then we just have to add our vehicle. And this will, again, make sense when we print. So now we have some solid strings to work with. So using this, we're going to go ahead and save. And we're going to run our file to test this out. And here we have our output. So you see first we have print S1, which is this is a string, so we have that. Second, we have print place, which is Florida, we have that. Our next one is using concatenation with the plus sign. So we're saying John is taking a plane, which is using that variable vehicle. And here we are using 2 variables inside of our print statement where we're saying John is going to Florida on a plane. So those are some ways that you can concatenate strings or combine text in Java. So now that we have that, we'll go ahead and put another print statement here, system.out.print line. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in S1. And then I'm going to type comma place. Oops, not comma. Sorry. Take this out. That's one plus place, And now that's just pretty much going to combine those two together so you can kind of see the difference of not having a space in between or after or before a actual file that you're running. So if you see here, we have our first string, which is S1, which has no space at the end. And we're adding place right after it, which also has no space right here or extra space. So when you print it out, you see it combines it because we did not put a space into it. So that's a little bit of a problem in our case. Now this is where some of those escape sequences could be useful. And in this case, we could definitely put an escape sequence here to help us format it. So we'll say in our comment, working with escape sequences. So our first escape sequence is working with our new line. So if we wanted to put these two on new lines, but use the same print statement, we would have to use the escape sequence \n. Now, it does not work directly like this in your code. So even if you were to do it like this, for example, it's still not going to work because it doesn't quite understand the / or the escape sequence unless it is wrapped inside of double quotes itself. So to use it properly, you have to wrap it around the escape sequence like this. And this is how you would use the escape sequence if you're not using the escape sequence directly in the string. So, for example, we'll create a string with an escape sequence. So we will say here, string morning greet, and we will say good morning. We're going to put our escape sequence in between it, and we're going to say, how are you? All right. So now we have a string that has an escape sequence inside of it. Now, if we wanted to check how this works, we would use our print statement. Print line. And then we would just say morning greet. All right. So now we have created a variable called morning greet, and we want to see how this escape sequence is going to work with it now that it is directly embedded into our string instead of placed into the print statement like we did on line 22. So now we're going to go ahead and run our code. And as you see, it has placed those two different sentences that we combine in one string to two different lines. So the area I have highlighted is all considered morning greet, although it appears to you as two different strings. So that just shows you how you can use escape sequence to format your output or your string. Again, there are other escape sequences. So if you wanted to use, for example, quote. So we could say string, or actually, in this case, we'll just go ahead and do a print statement to save us some space. So system.out.print line, we're going to say that John says, now we want to do the double quotes here. So we're going to do the / quote, we're going to say hi. And if you want to use this properly, you have to do backslash quote again to close it to everyone. All right. We're going to end that there. So this is basically going to print out quotes in our output here. So as you notice, all of these strings, yes, we are using quotes, but you do not see the quotes being printed to the output. That's because the quotes are ignored when they are ran in Java unless you are using escape sequence to tell Java, hey, I want them to appear in my output. So if we are to run this file now, then we should see those quotes in our output. And there you have it. And now says, John says hi to everyone. So I'll go ahead and add the comment using quotes in a string so you can remember. So those are examples of creating, printing, combining strings, and even using escape sequences in Java. Again, in my lecture videos, I do not necessarily cover all the ways that you can do these things. However, I'm covering the most common ones that will be most useful for you all. So now that we got some basics of how to create, print strings, we're now going to start applying our string methods. So I'm just going to add a little space to our screen here, and we're going to go ahead and do string methods. All right, and I'll go ahead and start scrolling up to show a better view. So working with string methods, first you need a string. Now, technically in our case, we already have enough strings to work with, so I'll just use some that are pre-existing. So we'll go ahead and say that we want to just do a print statement. So we could say system.out.print line. And I'm just going to create it bare for right now. So first, I'm going to, when using your method, you need to follow this, which would be variable name dot method name. Just like that. So in here, we're going to grab a variable. We'll grab S1. As soon as you hit dot, all of these that you see pop up on the screen are all methods that you can use. And as I stated in the lecture, I did not cover them all because there's a lot. So if you just go through, you see there is a lot of methods out there that you can use. And as I'm going down, you see that there's a little information included, and it's telling me what that specific method is doing. But you can also see that it's linked to that string package, and this is where it's accessing all of the built-in methods for strings. And it basically lives in the java.lang.string class, which lives in the java.lang package. Again, when you're working with strings, you don't have to necessarily import the package. It's automatically imported for us, so we can work with it. Now, as you keep going, you see we have all of these methods we can work with. But in this case, here's one that we covered in our lecture. So I'll go ahead and click enter on that. And then it is complete. So now what's going to happen is this code is going to print to me the length of my string. Now remember, it's pretty much just going to return a number to me. So to show you, I'll go ahead and run this, and you should only see a number returning to us. So it's saying our string of S1 is worth 16 characters, and remember that also includes any spaces in the string as well. So it's just returning the actual number. We don't know what this number is attached to. So if you need to understand what that number is attached to, you can add a string before it like this using concatenation. And you can say the string S1 has, we'll add a space. It's going to say 16 there. So we'll add another string after that and we'll say characters. And this will pretty much give us a sentence returning the information we need, but in a way that's more understandable to us. So if I now run my code, you see it has now inserted that method into our actual print statement and is combining it with other text that we're providing. So you can use a method by itself, but typically the methods work better or allow you to do more if you actually attach it to another string and work with it like that, such as this one. So here I add a comment and we'll do length method. Another way that you can use it is again with your other strings. So we will say, for this example, we'll create another string. We'll say string S2. I'm going to say working with string methods. Now in this case, we have lowercase and uppercase strings in our example. Now, let's say we want to store our string all lowercase. And if that is the case, what you could do is create a new variable and we could say S2 lower. And we're going to apply the lowercase or the to lowercase method to it. So we'll say S2 because you call your variable name first, dot. And then we will say to lowercase like that. And now that is going to create a string that is going to show us to lowercase, or basically making all of the string lowercase. So if you were to print these out, print line, we're going to say S2. We're going to do it again, system.out.println. Now we're going to call S2 lower. And you will see the difference that this method is doing when we run it. So here are our two strings, and you notice in our first one we originally had some uppercase letters in there. Here now on that second print statement, it is all now lowercase. So it basically converted it all to lowercase. So if you were to change it to uppercase, it would do the exact same thing, but that whole string would be uppercase. So just to mark our comments, I'm going to do .to lowercase method. All right. Now, because we have that, we're going to continue to move on. But so this video is not too long, I'm going to show you the other important component, which is the slicing and working with that index. So slicing strings. All right. We'll go ahead and continue to work with one of those strings we just created. So we'll go ahead and work with our S2. So we're going to head and do system.out.println. I'm going to go ahead and do S2. And we want to apply that substring method to use slicing. So I'll add that to our comments. All right. And I'm going to go in my print statement and I'm going to do dot substring. And you see those two methods. Remember, one you can start or have the start index, which is here. And then one you can have the start and end index. So we'll start with the start index. And by default, it gave me 0. But in this case, I don't necessarily want to start at 0 because that would print our whole string to us. So let's just give it a random number. But you have to make sure that the number is actually still within the length. So if you need to check the length of the string before, then I advise you to do so. But if you enter a number that doesn't exist in that string, it will cause you issues. So to show you an example, if we say 50, now we know that this string does not have 50 characters, but I'm just going to show you what's going to happen. Run. And you see we get an error. The reason we're getting an error is because we gave it an index that does not exist for that string. And you can see that here if you read your error message. It's telling us right here that our string index is out of bounds because we don't have 50 characters in this string. And it's basically saying that we only have 27. And it says out of bounds for length 27. So that means you need to make sure that you stay in the appropriate range or your code's not going to work. So for us to drop back down, we'll say 20. And work like that. And oops. Save it. So now we fixed our index. We'll try to run it again. And now you see it works with no problems. On top of that, because we're using the start substring, so we're doing dot substring and the start index only, it's pretty much going to give us the remainder of the characters after that start index. So I'm going to note that here. All right. Now, if we want to use this same example, just to save time, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this one. Paste it. And I'm going to use the start and end. Now remember, the one that we want to end with is not going to be included. So in this case, you need to figure out how exactly you want to end this properly. So if we're working with S2, then we know that we want to start, let's say, for example, we want to start with working. So we know that working is going to be starting at our 0 index here. So I'm starting at 0. Now let's say I want to access work. Now by default you're going to say, okay, let's do 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 0 to 4. And you say that. So we'll go ahead and run that. And you see it's printing 0 to 4, so it's only giving us work. Okay? So that is how you can do the start and the end index. So if you do 3, for example, 0, 1, 2, 3, we do that. We run it here, run code. It gives us work, so it drops off the K. 0, 1, 2. This is the third. You see the third does not print out. 0, 1, and 2 are the only thing that are going to print in this case. So if we wanted that last one, we would have to change it to 4 to get the full word. So that's what I mean when I'm saying you have to pay attention to that end index, because it may cut it short depending on the last end index that you provide to it. So to not have a very long extended video, this is basically how you would use your strings, working with them, working with string methods. Again, just to show you, for example, let's say system.out.print line. We can say hello strings. If you hit the period, you will still be able to access your string methods because it realizes it's a string. So we'll just go ahead and do the first one. Let's say we want to figure out what character is at the 5th index, and we'll go ahead and do our semicolon. So this is going to be using the char at, and we are directly applying it to a string, not a string variable. So that's the difference here. So you don't necessarily have to have the string stored as a variable to still work with the method. You can also just use it just like this. And we'll go ahead and save that, and we're going to go ahead and run it. And then you see it return to us whatever character was at that actual index of 5. So that's pretty much an overview of working with strings, what you can do with them, as far as creating them, as far as printing them, things of that nature. So it is very useful to go through the different methods that I just showed you. For example, when you just create a string, I just recommend you all to just go through this list and see the other ones that are there, do further research, test them out on your own, see what they do. Again, it will also give you examples. So if you scroll, it kind of explains to you how to work with it as well. But again, you can do further research to kind of assist you through this process. But hopefully you found it very useful to see how you can work with your data or your text overall in Java. And now that we have these foundations, we can start getting into some more complex stuff that will allow us to make more complex codes. So I look forward to seeing you all in our next lecture video to learn a new topic.